here we go. It's time to finally throw my hat into the ring and talk about my 100 favorite games of all time, ranked, rated, in order from the lowest to the highest. I rank everything I spend a significant amount of time with numerically in 6 different categories: sound, graphics, gameplay, replay, nostalgia, and tilt. These are all weighted differently, and after a lot of fine-tuning for actual years, I've come up with something pretty representative for my playing experience that I'm going to share with you now. So of note here, I never was an RPG fan with a few notable exceptions, so Final Fantasy not only won't make this list, I've never really even played a main series game. It's games I own and systems I own, so PlayStation 2, for example, sorry, maybe next lifetime. Then again, more niche things like the GameCube and the Dreamcast are well represented. This is just what I've played and really my favorite games of the batch I've managed to get through. I don't count PC games either. This is because back when I was a kid, your PC games were things like Age of Empires, and it meant a completely different experience than you would get with a controller in front of your television. And finally, you should know that I've tapered off over the years. I don't play the games now that I used to get to play as a kid. I don't have the time. I don't get to do too much gameplay, actually. So I did get a Switch. That is my most recent system, and I got like 5 games for it. But for example, I'm still playing around with Breath of the Wild to the point where I haven't even given it a rating yet. So if I had to tell you one Switch game though that I think will make it in once I spend more time with it, I'd nominate Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I think it'll actually end up pretty highly ranked. So because you can't play everything ever made and still have a life, like, I have a career, I have a family, don't consider this a definitive list for all time. Think of this more like my own personal ballot for the top 100 games ever made. If you add in your ballot, maybe we'll get something that makes a lot more sense collaboratively. But I won't get off my soapbox. These are definitely my top 100 picks, at least for right now. And, lists aren't static. Especially when you're actually ranking everything numerically like I am. This is a snapshot in time. Once I finally get this video made, I'm looking forward to playing more games and destroying this list. This is always a fluid situation. So, this is my own personal favorites list and you'll disagree heavily. That's fine. I hope this is a good time and some fun background viewing. A lot of people do honorable mentions near the end, but I'd like to start here. So, here are 11 games that almost, but not quite, made this list. Number 111, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Okay, right off the bat, I'm a Mario guy and a Nintendo guy. I did get a Sega Genesis when I was in my teens, but by that time the GameCube was out and it was my favorite console. Sonic 2 was the only Sonic game I had on an original cartridge, and it's probably the one I spent the most time with. Now this is not a case where the original is the best and the sequel is a money grab. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is better in every single way. It has some incredible music, and it's a fun alternative to a Mario-style platform game. But in a game where your character's biggest attribute is going fast, except for maybe attitude, I never understood why speed was so dangerous to you. I've gotten deep into this one, but I've never quite succeeded in beating it. Anyway, this is no hidden gem. You run to the right, the levels get progressively more maze-like, and unlike in Sonic 1, now you get to spin dash. Number 110, WWE 2K14. Okay, so this is a complicated selection. For a while, I got into wrestling and got into the WWE games as a result from about 12 to 2K14. So WWE 13 is a game that should have made the top 100 on its own. It has a better story mode than 14, takes place in the late 90s Attitude Era. It's got a better roster. It had a universe mode that I swear was better too. For the uninitiated, universe mode is a season mode where attacks, alliances, and heel turns seemingly happen at random, but can actually be somewhat controlled through taking care of some of the less obvious settings. So I was so successful with this in WWE 13 that I wrote a Reddit post about it that I saw getting passed around as an FAQ later without permission. It's cool though. The one problem, WWE 13 has a glitch where 2 counts will very rarely happen when you attempt a pin. So this is like a football game not having 4th down. So instead of 13 making the top 100, it has this glitch that really kills it, so 2K14 instead is the top one, and it's an honorable mention here. It's got the talent from the time period, actually has a lot of famous like WrestleMania match talent, which is good too. It's got a belt customizer, which is awesome. You can wrestle in any of the WrestleMania venues to that time period, so it's great. Yeah, but it's almost bittersweet when you think about how much better 13 could have been. As an honorable mention, it's still my favorite wrestling game of all time. Number 109 is Super Mario Kart. It's a childhood favorite that didn't quite measure up as years went on, so Super Mario Kart takes the F-Zero engine and twists it into a multiplayer-focused experience with Mario characters. So it's got battle mode and multiple circuits of 5, yes that's 5, races each. Difficulty level increases as your engine speed does, so from 50 to 100 to 150. It's a great game. It isn't one that aged particularly well. Part of that's the mode 7, part of it's really just the difficulty. It's not a game you can go back to after years of not playing it, or like it's riding a bike. Not like that at all. It does seem to get more difficult without practice, so there's not a lot of incentive to come back every now and then, especially because this is a series where there's been iteration on just about every console, and each one gets better and better and better. But still, it's nostalgic for me. Every once in a while, I'll break it out with a friend. Actually, especially now that the Switch has the online service, it's one of those games that we'll play on there every once in a while just because it's Super Mario Kart. Everyone played it, and everyone's loved it. Number 108, Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So far, this is one of the highest rated Switch titles for me, but keep in mind I've only played a handful of them. Pikmin on GameCube is one of my favorites, we'll talk about it later, and so Pikmin 3 Deluxe was a sure thing when it went on sale right around the time I completed my first Switch game and was ready for a new one. So the environments are beautiful, and the music and gameplay is classic Pikmin, but one problem is that the Pikmin series didn't seem to know what else to do besides get more complicated as time went on. I really don't think it had to do that. The three-person puzzles in this one really aren't my favorite thing. It also continues kind of the time-honored tradition in this series of having an annoying final boss. That's just kind of what Pikmin is. But the length is just right for me. About 10 hours in all, and I really enjoyed my time with it. Number 107, North and South. So, I almost want to revisit my rankings. I can't believe this isn't in the top 100. North and South is an underrated, quote-unquote, hidden NES gem where you play as either the Union or the Confederacy in the American Civil War. You can pick any year from, I think, 1861 to 1864, and the starting positions are different for every year. You can also set shipping, Native American attacks, or Mexican intervention. It starts out turn-based, but when the armies meet, moves into a real-time battle. It's sort of like a prehistoric version of Rome Total War. You want to try and capture railway stations, which then shifts you into a sort of side-scrolling attack sequence. This one's absolutely worth a look. I kind of hate the phrase hidden gem. I used it with this earlier because it's lost some meaning with the internet. Look at it, every single NES game has been pretty in-depth reviewed. But if you think of it like this, no one I knew, absolutely no one, had this game growing up. I don't think anyone had heard of this game, around me at least, growing up. This is one that kind of snuck up on gamers over the years, and today it makes a respectable few top 100 lists for the NES, and it should. But I'd argue it's still underrated even there. It should be toward the top of those lists. But then again, what do I know? I've said all of this, and I still put out some of my top 100, so got a feeling I'm going to regret this one.
Hey, come on over, have some fun with Crazy Taxi!
Is number 106.
It's party time.
Crazy Taxi
Let's
was an
have
arcade
some
game
fun.
that made a home for the Dreamcast, becoming one of the big titles on that system.
Alright,
It's one I
let's
always
go
think
make some
about when the
crazy money.
Dreamcast was kind of still alive, what we were playing with it with my friends. So, once the Dreamcast went belly up, I think it was Acclaim got the rights to publish it for the GameCube, maybe also PS2, but it was actually a launch title for the GameCube, albeit kind of a forgotten one. The GameCube launch, by the way, is like the best launch ever, and this game is just one part of why. The gameplay is arcade style and length, even with the addition of an original town along with the arcade town, and there's an additional crazy box full of challenges that never moved the needle much for me, but maybe will for you. God, I miss the Dreamcast controller. It's perfect for these kind of games, and especially just with those arcade games, something that really thrived on the Dreamcast that you don't really get as much of today. Number 105 is Double Dragon 2. So, one of the classic beat 'em ups, and a massive upgrade from the original in that you can now play co-op, so I guess Double Dragon finally means 2. I used to play this with a cousin all the time growing up. Now, the music ranges from good to absolutely incredible on stage 2. He actually bought the song Easy Lover. Phil Collins was on that because I heard it was similar to that song, and it was good enough. You reach the helicopter level, and then suddenly the screen gets smaller to simulate the cramped space. You gotta love the creativity needed for that on the 8-bit hardware. Now, unfortunately, in later levels, this game actually includes some platforming challenges that should absolutely never have been part of this game. So I've actually never gotten past those, and I've never finished it. But just saying, this is a nostalgic blast and one of my favorite beat 'em ups. Number 104, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. So, speaking of games I've never finished, I really doubt too many people ever did finish this one. There's so many levels, they're all packed to the brim with fun shooting action, some puzzle solving, off-the-wall weapons, and B-movie references everywhere you look. This game is a game written for fans of B-horror, and since I am a fan of B-horror, obviously it's one I loved. So when the SNES Classic came out, I think a favorite pastime of nerds everywhere was kind of talking about what games they intended to hack into their consoles. I think people were, making their lists and kind of picking, how many am I going to have? Will I have 50? Will I have 100? And kind of working out which are the ones I've got to have. And I imagine this one was right behind Chrono Trigger and maybe Donkey Kong Country 2, and ones that people really wanted on their classics. So obviously there's a lot of ways to play this one, including Sega Genesis. A little bit of, I understand, a rare game today, but one that we loved growing up and everyone played, but no one finished. Number 103, Yars Revenge. Okay, it's simple gameplay, and I'm not going to try to make it sound more complex than it is by using the weird terms that the manual does. In Yars Revenge, there's a bad guy on one side of the screen, a force field surrounding him, a rainbow ribbon in the center of the screen, and a small dot stalking you, that's you by the way, like Frankenstein's monster. You gotta take out that bad guy with a super weapon you can only get by almost touching him. And if you do it right, there's a light show on the screen. Yeah, isn't that pretty? And you do it again. I want to apologize for my bad play here. It looks like my controller is broken. I swear I'm a little better at Yars Revenge than this, maybe not that much better. Anyway, you distill a game down to its most simple form, and sometimes, like here, it's better than the 100-hour epics you see today. So here's just one example of that. .102 is The Lion King. Oh man, it's hard. You've probably heard how hard this game is, but the gameplay variety is incredible. I still, and to this very day, have a ton of trouble with the second level, Can't Wait to Be King. But even once you get through that, it barely eases up. And I know that I'm saying I have trouble with a hard game. Well, I've been playing this since I was a kid. We got this when I was very young, and I was pretty good at it back then. But to this day, I've never quite knocked out what you're supposed to do in the second level to avoid getting knocked out when you're on the ostrich. Now, graphically, this one's beautiful. Aladdin on Genesis might get the hype, but The Lion King is one that actually does look just about as good as the movie. The gameplay is varied enough, but it maintains its feet firmly on platform or ground, and if you can get to the final level of Scar, you'll have done something that's not quite up there with Battletoads, but it isn't exactly far away when you remember this is a Disney game. Had to be aimed at young children, right? This is actually a case where this was a game that was a lot higher up my list initially and had to be adjusted pretty far down with the tilt category. This is a good thing. I mean, this game is good. It's deserving of number 102, and I still play it about once a year, but it belongs just outside the top 100, not in it.
Welcome to 1999, the year of the cyber athlete.
So number 101 is Knockout Kings. And whenever I first had a PlayStation, I was a kid and I was into sports games, so my PlayStation collection was basically college sports games. Tekken games I think I had, and I had a Tomb Raider game in there somewhere. So Knockout Kings was one of those sports games. Boxing games historically are pretty fun. Boxing on the 2600 is great, and obviously Punch-Out speaks for itself. Super Punch-Out's great. But Knockout Kings lets you create your own ridiculous boxer and put him up against Muhammad Ali. Now you can play in a simulation style like here, or you can play that slugfest mode where low blows and kidney punches are legal. In fact, sometimes you can get away with a low blow in the simulation mode. I did when I was playing here, which I always loved, and referees shouldn't be perfect even in sports video games. That was awesome. So this is one I had and loved growing up. And I got rid of the PlayStation, got rid of all my PlayStation games. So when I started to rebuild a little bit of the PlayStation collection on the PS3, I picked this up and played it again, and I still loved it. You know, it's so close, but here it is. It's the best honorable mention I have.